Predicted visiem. Um, I have this superpower where I make people think I can speak Latvian, and then it all goes wrong and gets lost. But so it's great to yeah. Aris has been asking me for ages to come and speak, and finally we made it happen. So I understand this history, and that you've already had someone speak about passive solar greenhouses. And I want to say at the start that this my version is very much an ongoing project. It was an experiment, and it continues to be an experiment. As you will see, we are now in our third year. Sorry, fourth year of using. This will be our fourth growing season this year, and we are still learning and adjusting, and as you will see, and that's kind of the beauty of this project, that it's been about continuous development, both of passive solar and of my own skills. So I just thought briefly at the start we'll just go over some basic principles again in case someone wasn't aware. So I'm sure you're aware that the Earth, that the way that we are in Latvia at 58 degrees north, roughly, the sun does not shine over our heads, and it only reaches about 56 degrees above us, not 90 degrees, which would be overhead. So we essentially have a south. We have sunshine that shines from the south. Actually, today the sun was 43 degrees high, as it is today, and it will never be more than 56 degrees high in Latvia. And so the sun will, it's a fact that the sun will always shine from the south, which we need to remember. Most greenhouses look like this. They have, whether they're square or this more oval shape or Gothic shape, which is the new style. Essentially, they have some kind of glass or clear, transparent coating on all sides, and this is really because you don't know where you're going to place it in the garden, and so it needs to have clear sides so the sun can shine on whichever side it is. But the reality is here in Latvia, the sun will only shine on the south side, and so the north, east, and west sides. The north side is definitely of no use, and the east and west sides have some use early in the morning and late at night, but essentially they're not really required. And the bigger problem with this kind of greenhouse is that when the temperatures go down at night, and particularly here in Latvia, when they go down below zero in the exact this time exactly now and later in autumn, but more of a problem is now when we have these beautiful hot days in the daytime in spring, and then at night it goes below zero. I think we had -6 the other day. It's difficult for these types of greenhouses to keep the heat in, and so the heat escapes through all these thin, transparent sides. If we look at just basic, all these illustrations actually are from videos that I've made, which I've just taken screen grabs and sort of put them together for this presentation. But in all my videos, part of this project process was that I wanted to video everything and talk about my thoughts and the science and go into great detail about all these things so that it was a resource for other people. So this is kind of what we look at in Latvia. I know perhaps we've had some warmer years in the last 2 or 3 years, but this was made 4 years ago.
Sorry, Gary. Do you share the screen now? We don't see.
Yeah, screen is sharing.
Yeah. I think we don't see the screen.
Oh, sorry. I see everything.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes. See, correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So we kind of have three and a half safe months where temperatures are above zero, and then the other months are either extremely low or it's very difficult to gauge what they will be, but there's a risk of a frost. And this is a problem. And what I really wanted to happen was that we kind of extended these, if I call them shoulder months, so March, April, some of May, and then September, October, November, we call them shoulder months. So it would be really nice to have a place where we could grow more food in these times and utilize that. And so we can extend both the safe months for warmer crops, the green area, and then the blue areas, which are suitable for more frost tolerant crops. We could somehow make that workable within a greenhouse. And if we look at a 24-hour period, this is kind of what happens. Early in the morning, the sun comes up and we have this, the temperature rising. And again, this is kind of an average day in spring or autumn. And then at night, the temperatures dip below. And that's a problem for regular greenhouses. So how do we solve this? Well, we come on to the passive solar design, which, again, I understand you're familiar with, but the principle is 3 sides, east, north, and west sides are covered up and they are insulated. And we have a single side, south, where the sunlight can come through. And of course, that means we've got 3 less sides where heat can escape at night. And then within the passive solar greenhouse, we have some kind of heat mass, whether it's water or stone or rock or something. Water is the most efficient, but there are problems with that in climates like ours in Latvia, where it gets too cold in the winter. And it's south facing, and so we have all the sunlight. And then at night time, that heat is released by the heat mass. And it keeps the inside of the greenhouse safe and somewhat warm, or at least above zero. And we're able to flatten this line out a bit by keeping the temperatures above zero, roughly. Yeah. So when I started this project, I gave myself some simple rules, having done lots of research about passive solar and what I've seen on the internet at the time. And just to go through these roughly, it had to be affordable. My research, and I'm sure you've seen them as well, there are some absolutely crazy passive solar greenhouses out there. And when they talk about the cost of these, it's just eye-watering. It's like $50,000, $60,000 for this passive solar greenhouse, and that's just ridiculous. And so my thought was, how can I do this and make it affordable? It has to be functional. My greenhouse is about growing food. It's not a beauty project. It's not a vanity project. It's about growing food. That's its purpose. I wanted the project to be replicable. So I wanted that other people could use this design and build something similar, particularly if I could manage to make it affordable. I wanted to make sure that it was workable, so that it was comfortable to work inside. And I'd put that rule in because I'd seen quite a few examples which weren't, to my mind, workable. They were very small. And it had to be durable as well. So whilst it had to be affordable, it had to be durable. So I had to find materials that would be cost effective and sort of last. And this is the real where all the things are becoming really balanced, and you had to really carefully consider affordability over durability, and somewhere you had to meet a middle line, as it were, meet somewhere in the middle to make it all work. And I wanted to be hackable. What did I mean by that? Well, I wanted it to be a kind of an ongoing project that could have changes and improvements without having to start again. It had to be built in a way that could be changed, and that meant either through things that I'd learnt myself, or new technologies, or advice that came in from elsewhere that would lead me to change things. And 4 years on, I can say that this has worked. These rules have become, I can tick the boxes of the rules, and apart, durable. Well, we're only 4 years in, so we need to see. I wanted it to last at least 10 years, and I'm hoping for more. Okay. And so I started then designing what I wanted my passive solar's greenhouse to look like. I know it's a fairly familiar shape, but I don't know if this video will work. But part of this process, I taught myself how to do computer design and animation. And so I could fully design the greenhouse in this program. And I could also simulate sunlight, how sunlight moves throughout the day, and build the rest of our garden. This is actually what our garden looks like. And it allowed me to play around with things to make it work, and do some sizing and costs and stuff like that. Some things have changed since this, because this is the original design 4 years ago. But essentially, it looks like this, other than it's been painted for durability. And I decided to call it, the reality is, and I think this is what Aris touched on at the start, is it's a 3 seasons greenhouse. It's impossible to have a full winter greenhouse here, unless you're willing to pay for energy for lighting and some element of additional heating, which I didn't particularly want to do, but the options are there. So it really is a seasonal extension greenhouse, or a 3-season greenhouse. And I do sometimes refer to it as a hybrid greenhouse. So it's not 100% passive solar, but it's not like a traditional style greenhouse. Okay. So side on, just to sort of give an example of the workability, I wanted to have kind of maximize having ground space for planting vegetables, because it is for growing food, but equally I wanted to be able to fit inside it. And I also constrain myself in terms of efficiency of materials. So the poles actually were trees from our forest, and I managed to get a design that ticked all these boxes, and from one single 6-meter piece of timber for the trusses, spars is it in Latvian, I think. I managed to work out so that I could get all the bit from one 6-meter piece of timber with waste. And so kind of, for an average person, it was going to be okay for a head, and it was going to have plenty of room for growing stuff, which I'll explore in greater detail in a minute. So the project began. The reason I am raising my arms here is because I finally got the last bit of turf off the ground, and it was quite hard work. Also, this is spring, and I was a bit out of shape from winter as well. This was not a brand new, it was a new greenhouse, but it was a replacement. So we weren't building it as an additional one. We were replacing an old greenhouse which had fallen to bits, and you can see that in the videos. So the old greenhouse was here. And so obviously we needed to adjust the shape so that it was completely south facing. Well, actually it is 1 degree towards the east. So you just get a little bit more sunlight in the morning when you need it, and not so much in the evening. But that's, yeah, the old greenhouse was there, the new one was here. There's me putting the poles up and starting to line up, get all these poles balanced in the correct position. I won't go too much into the building process of it because it's all covered in videos. There we are, putting the trusses up. Then putting the sides up, which are then painted with a waterproof paint to protect them, and the roof is on by then as well. And the rest was very, fell into place well without any real problems on the building side. So in terms of what can we do in this 3-season greenhouse? It essentially has room for 3 successions. I call the first succession the cold weather crops. So we plant in things like pak choys and lettuces, Chinese cabbage, stuff like that. There's some examples of these are 2 different years here where we've got stuff over here, radish, pak choys, lettuces, Chinese leaf cabbages up here, and then all the other seedlings join them slowly. And then on this side, we've got different lettuces. This was an early year. This is a bit later on in the year now, but pak choys, this is probably about late May because the pak choys have gone to seed, late May, early June. And this week, the tomatoes would be transplanted in there. You can see everything else is kind of ready to go out. Because of the way the greenhouse works, it's quite a safe place for transplants. We can put them out here earlier, and so they can acclimatize better, which is nice. And then the second succession is our tomatoes and peppers and things like that, basil, stuff. We do interplant some stuff as well, some marigolds, samtenes, I think in Latin, yeah, or calendula, all those kind of things. We mix them up, and we have you start to think about the sizes of things. So at the front here, we have peppers, which don't get particularly tall. In this second, we have 2 rows of peppers here. In this kind of middle center here, center right, we have determinate tomatoes up to about a meter 50. I've managed to find some varieties which work well for that. And then at the back here, we can have actually 2 rows, but they are spaced, so they share the light. We can have indeterminate tomatoes, which will grow all the way up and actually into the trusses as well. And we can also play with them. We can drop them so that they can continue growing higher. This is the planting out of the first year. And at this time, the project was ongoing. So the insulation is not in there because we basically were building it around the spring season and then May. And then we needed to get stuff in the ground. So we got stuff in the ground and then done the insulation later in the year. We've got much better with spacing now and getting used to how the greenhouse operates and how we can push it and things like that. So these are all things that have learned over the 3 years already been going, and we're still making change. We will make changes this year as well. And then we kind of have the third succession. So you get to a place where the tomatoes are growing tall, the peppers are kind of maxed out, and they're enjoying the sunlight that's coming down here. And because they've grown taller, they don't have a problem with sunlight there. And of course, as you come more into summer, you're then pruning the plants, and you end up with something like this. And this allows sunlight to come down to the bottom. And then you can start planting in July and August. We can start interplanting things like, again, cabbages, Chinese cabbage, whatever, and they can go into winter. And essentially, the only thing that becomes a problem is light. It's not an issue of heat. These crops are cold tolerant as well. We can, if there were frost were to happen in September, the greenhouse, it wouldn't be an issue for the greenhouse. By then, everything is really warm. Even in late spring, it can absorb frosts up to about -6, -7 without it being a problem inside. And that's even without the greenhouse being fully insulated. You may have seen in an earlier photo the front panels still aren't insulated, and we've sort of found that it works without, but we will get round to doing that this year. So you can have stuff planted earlier on and later on without it being a problem, and tomatoes are still producing into autumn, particularly if you find some varieties which are more lend themselves to later harvesting rather than earlier on, and you can blend the early and late as well to get tomatoes throughout the year. They're quite happy in there. Here's a photo thinking about the illustration we just saw, where you can see you've got peppers. You can't see that well, but there are peppers along the front there. Then there are some medium sort of determinate tomatoes, which grow up to about a meter and a half. And then our taller varieties are at the back here, growing happily. We also put some cucumbers in the back and melons. They always go in the back corner because that causes the least problems with light. Don't block any light out. It seems to work well. Just examples of heat from this week. I would say the ground's not fully warmed up yet, so it's not performing 100%. But you can see where earlier on we had temperatures down to about -5, -6, and the greenhouse, even it still keeps it only. I mean, there's nothing in there at the moment other than some radish, some stuff like that. The cold weather crops will grow out this week, but they'll be fine. It's doing a good job. We can do improvements in the greenhouse, which I'll talk about in a little bit. If you're wondering about the kind of how it looked outside and how it's developed and changed, this is what it looked like kind of when it was being built, and this is how it looked a year after that when we developed the garden outside, where we had kind of polyculture garden. It's sort of thing you permaculture gardeners will recognize. Wildflowers along here where the windows don't open, and then where these windows do open, that's kind of left with just wood chips. And we put this frame up as well. Well, actually, the problem that we have more of is extreme temperatures, not the extreme cold. And so we do sometimes. One year we did use shade netting, not last year, as we know it was a bit of a disaster last summer. We didn't need it last summer. And yeah, there's another photo of last year where the wildflowers have become more established. And so that the outside part has developed nicely. It is also, I've developed it as a smart greenhouse. I wanted to kind of have a go at electronics and learn that, but I kind of put an extra rule in that it had to develop its own or generate its own energy. And so I put in a single solar panel, and there's a car battery inside which powers it. We have I built this control unit which controls everything. It measures the temperatures and the humidity, and you can charge your phone in it as well, and stuff like that. And you can override it if you there's some microprocessors inside. And I learned all this electronics and coding and all that kind of stuff. I appreciate that maybe not everyone's interested in this sort of side of it. And that controls the windows. The windows have electric actuators on them, which push the windows open and close them depending on the temperature, and they open at different temperatures. And then there's a ventilation fan in there as well, which again is all powered by the 12 volt. And the great thing about this is you need the ventilation fan when it's the hottest, and that's when the sun shines the most, and that's when you've got the most solar energy through the panel to power the ventilation fan. That's just a car radiator fan. So that works nicely. And also we've got automated watering. So there's a soil moisture sensor in there, which is sensing how much moisture is in the soil, and then can irrigate it. It can pump in and out. I'll just go back to one. What happens with the ventilation is that is open, so there is some passive ventilation. What happens is cool air will come in through these windows, and that will warm up, and the hot air will rise up to the top of the building, and that process of rising drags in more air in here, and then it naturally vents out there. It's only when the temperature gets above a certain level, when it's not working well enough, then the fan turns on and will assist of the exhausting of hot air. And of course, exhausting all the hot air at the top will then again drag in more air down the bottom here. And it's great in summer. You can watch that happening. You can see the tomato plants moving while the air is being drawn in through those windows. One modification I'm thinking about this year, an improvement, is utilizing what we've learned. Obviously, is that the air behind. I'm jumping around a bit. You may be used to have heard of this geothermal cooling, where I don't know whether Jerome spoke about this, but certainly there are some greenhouses in Canada which draw air in from far away, and then they run it underground, and slowly the air cools using geothermal cooling slash heating, where the temperature of the earth is constant, and then it drags the air in there. For me, that would require it would require an excavator and lots of piping, and it would have been too expensive to do. So we didn't have that option of doing that. But I've realized since, and I've done some measurements, that because the sun doesn't shine behind here, it's shadowed. The air temperature here is a lot cooler than it can get inside, and I did wonder whether it's worth me taking the cool air from around the back and pumping it back into the greenhouse. So rather than air being forced out, air is forced in. And we do have some options of digging down a little deeper than just the air that's around the back there. And even if it was like 5 degrees cooler, it would make a big difference to the greenhouse. And then by pumping in that cooler air, again, using the solar panel, putting the power on this fan rather than at the front, it would push air in, cooler air, and then that would push the hotter air out the other end. So that's something I'm going to experiment with this year. The other thing that we actually never got round to doing, and you may have seen, is that we never got round to actually building the heat mass. Initially, the idea was to use barrels with water in, but the problem was I couldn't then source the barrels. They seemed to be non-existent in Latvia at the time. And actually, it dawned on me quite quickly that this would be a 3-season greenhouse, and actually trying to do all the plumbing to get all the water out during the winter time and then refill it the next year was a bit of a headache. We do have some ruins around the place, and I considered that actually what I could do is build the wall from the natural stone here, which isn't as efficient as water, but it would work really well. But a lot of the stones are too big, and I just didn't have it was going to be a massive job to build that wall. I still want to build that wall, but it was just going to be a massive job. Maybe someday I'll get a party of people up here and we can have a go at it. But the space is there for the wall. It just never got built. And actually, the greenhouse has performed well without it. But it's now I want it to perform a bit better. So we will look at doing something at the back here, getting some stones in here, starting to build that wall. And also insulate the front panels as well, finish that, see if we can improve on what we've already done. So, was it worth it? So this is the question I think that probably people are going to want to ask. Was it worth it? To me, you need to think about more than just the greenhouse itself and the whole process that I've gone through, because actually through this process I've developed myself, and I've I've acquired all these extra skills which can be useful, particularly all the science stuff and the maths of looking at construction. I had to work out all the loadings for the snow. I had to get all the angles right for the glazing as best I could within that kind of rules of utilizing, making the most out of the timber and the space inside. The electrics of the solar, playing around with solar panel electrics, the coding for the system, smart system, and electronics, and all that kind of stuff. And what a lot of this stuff, what I was doing is I was doing it through winter. I was learning these things through winter when there's more downtime and there's that time to do that. And we now have been able to share our experience on YouTube through all the design, the building, and all the, I've covered everything in there, even how to do all the electronics and design the circuits and all that kind of stuff. And thousands of people, tens of thousands of people around the world have enjoyed that process. In fact, one of the videos that I did talking about the elements of the passive solar greenhouse using the animation has been watched over 400,000 times, I think. We've got a greenhouse that actually paid for itself by doing those videos and people watching them. It paid me back some money, which actually covered the cost of the greenhouse. I appreciate that not everyone will be in that position, but by giving back, it seems to have paid for itself. We've certainly got a lot more flexibility for growing food. Yes, we can't grow food all year round, but we can grow it earlier in the spring, and we can grow the warmer crops. We'll continue to harvest later in the year. One thing I forgot to mention is what we can also do with that greenhouse is we can some brassicas, which if you want to overwinter them to go to seed, they would be to sort of die out in the outside. You can bring them into the greenhouse, dig them in, and then they will live just about throughout the winter, and then you can take them out the next year and put them to seed. And some of the things like purple sprouting broccoli, which in the UK will survive our winter, wouldn't survive here. And you grow purple sprouting broccoli, you need it to go to seed to get those purple sprouts. It just kind of dies outdoors here, but you can do it in the greenhouse. It will keep it alive. So there's the way that you can use the greenhouse changes as well. You've got those options. And we've now got that space to experiment further with the examples like I gave with the additional ventilation and other ideas that people come forward and say, have we tried this? Have we tried that? And we can put those things into place and report back. And of course, now we've got the experience to consult to others. And I've been approached by someone in Estonia who wants to build a big one, and some other people in other countries as well, which is nice. And talk to you guys as well, of course. So yeah, there we are. It was kind of a quick walk through. It was difficult to know what to cover. I think with these kind of things, I'm happy that if you're left with questions, you can ask me questions. Whether you want to ask the questions in Latvian and then maybe someone can translate, I don't mind. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about this project, this process, our experiences.
Actually, we have a questions already. Question: is the light enough when east and west walls are not transparent? Is the heat more important?
The light's not a problem because of the number of hours that you get. There is enough light from the time that the sun will hit the glass and until it rotates all the way around into the evening and no longer hits the glass. There's enough light hours for plants to grow.
Actually, in your picture of the early tomatoes, kind of a second row was leaning towards the light, so it might be a sign of it. Okay, but yeah. Marex is asking, what do you use for heat sink?
So, as I explained, we don't have the heat sink in there. There's something we need to build, but we found that the earth itself acts as a heat sink. One thing we might also do is bring some bricks into the walkway here. And that will also soak up some heat. It basically, we found that it was working well without the heat sink because we were using it as a 3-season greenhouse and not full winter. It works quite well. We know that it can improve by having the heat sink in there, but we've managed to make it work without. But we've got lots of, like I said, this kind of dolomite stone around that we can bring in and build a wall at the back. The space is there to do that.
The next question from Agnes is, how large is the inverter?
For the solar panel, it's a single solar panel. It's 140 watt, 12 volts, and that goes into a car battery and a small. We don't have an inverter because it's DC. We don't need to change it to AC voltage. It's just all the systems are DC 12 or 5 volts with a small converter to drop it to 5 volts for the electronics. But it's a very simple system. We don't need an inverter.
Marex is wondering, what upgrades are you thinking besides underground air cooling?
We had looked at misters, playing about with misters, but not everything works. Misters do kind of work. I would have perhaps a better pump, using electronic valves to control watering. Some of the improvements will be through changing the management system, upgrading the management system to work differently. So, for example, I might actually do away with soil moisture and have timed irrigation. I think that might be more effective. We also have options for, I don't know if you've heard of something called swamp cooling or evaporative cooling, where you actually cool the air by using water, rather than one option we have is rather than putting a pipe underground, we simply put the water underground and chill the water using the ground temperature, and that then will cool the air down. It's a well-known established method of cooling air, evaporative cooling. Other kind of improvements, not really modifications, would be to get the insulation correct on the front, and also I will be putting a film on the back to reflect light at the back, and that would be UV protected film as well, so it won't be affected by the sunshine and has a longer life. So we'll put a white UV film on the back to project more light back into the greenhouse. They're the main things really, and I've already got that actually. It just needs to be done in this spring.
Thank you. Agnes is asking, have you considered an inside heating unit to extend the season?
Yeah, I had. On the original design, I haven't got any internal pictures of the original design. There was how was it? Kamins, is it in Latvian? A very small wood heater, and I had an idea of actually having a small heater on one end, and then the pipe would go through the mass and then exhaust the other end. So a bit like a rocket mass heater, it would pump that heat into the stone mass and then exhaust the other end. And I had thought about that, but I don't think we need it, to be honest, unless we were to start modifying it heavily for 4-season use, which would require lights. It would require that kind of heating. But there is the possibility to have it, just that we haven't.
Have you checked soil temperature in winter? Is it getting to freezing or not?
Yeah, it will do when things are minus, 15, 20, then it will go below zero. I've got I need to go and get the data, but I put a little I have to obviously unhook the electrics in the wintertime for the control box. I don't have that running all year, and besides, there's not enough sunlight to power it. But I have left a little sensor in there, like a portable sensor, and I need to download the data. It takes 3 months of data, so I need to check what those results are, exactly how cold it gets in there over winter.
Near this greenhouse, you have a regular greenhouse as well. Can you say approximately how much more of a harvest you can get out of this kind of season extension greenhouse? Like, is it twice as much or not so much?
I wouldn't say twice. It's a difficult one, because it's different vegetables. So you will get perhaps overall you probably get it depends how you utilize the space. We could definitely utilize the space even better than we do, but you could get maybe 50% more. But you've got to remember is all the other things that you can get the transplants in there earlier. You don't need to worry about bringing things in and out. It gives you a lot more flexibility. You can grow a variety of things in there. It can keep those things alive over winter, which the other greenhouse wouldn't be able to do. It's not just about growing more food. It's about kind of it's a utility greenhouse in that it allows you to do more things than what you could do before. And year on year, obviously, it depends. Last year was a pretty terrible year with all the moisture and everything. That did knock things back.
What about really hot summer days, for example? Is the temperature inside rising really fast, or is it more or less like manageable?
It's manageable with the shade netting. because of it's you just need to put some shade netting on. But to be honest, we needed shade netting on the other greenhouse as well. That wasn't unique to this. I'm wondering whether this new method of cooling will be more effective than the more sort of assisted passive version. I would definitely say that cooling is a bigger issue than making sure it's warm enough.
Do you intend to grow something during the winter?
I would like to, but you're very restricted. This is really a 3-season greenhouse. One thing that you can grow are things like the lamb's leaf salad will survive. I forget the name of it in Latvian now, but you can buy it here now. Actually, I think the Latvian name is the same as the Latin name. But it's like a very sweet salad, which will survive really low temperatures. So I'm not trying to heat this in the middle of February or January. That's just impossibility because of the grey skies and stuff like that. But as soon as you do get the smallest amount of sun, it will heat up really nicely. I mean, it's when you get that kind of February sun, when outside. I've done a film before, I think, when it's like -15 outside and I've gone in there and it's +20 or something. But it's not warm enough to be consistent. I think as Ardis said at the start, really, the realities here in Latvia is we can't grow things unless we, in a passive solar greenhouse traditional, unless we use a lot of additional light and heat, which we need the energy for.
Questions are welcome, either in written or oral format, so please do not hesitate. Lūdzu, cienījamie klausītāji, jautājumi. Izmantojam iespēju. Katrīna is saying amazing story. Thanks a lot.
Lūdzu. Of course, it would be great sometime to get you guys up here actually as the permaculture club, I guess, and do a site visit. As I'm sure Aris has said, we have a lot more going on up here than just this. So on the super hot days, what happens? Well, it gets hot. So, like I said, we've tried. I think controlling the heat has been our longest learning curve, rather than trying to fight the cold or something like that, or the light. And so we've got the shade netting, which works really well. I've got this experiment which I'm going to try this year, and I will video that as well. I've played around with misters, which worked okay, but I wasn't as comfortable spraying water around. Misters are a really good like firefighting kind of, like you've got super hot temperatures and you need to cool it down quickly. The misters will work really well. And I could divert the pump that I've got is a high pressure pump, and it did supply enough pressure to make the misters work. But it really is a like firefighting type thing, and it wasn't something that I think there are better ways of doing it, like the example I gave, or I'm giving here on the screen.
Maybe some additional hatches on the roof or you're not considering this like
Yeah, I mean,
open?
some designs of passive solar have like an extension here with the hatches, and it became quite complicated for me to make that work with the, from memory now, 4 years ago, to do with the glazing, to have that and all the other things made it kind of pushed it out of budget. It needed a lot more timber and glass and polycarbonate to make it work. But it's maybe something I can think about later on, certainly.
And how thick is the glazing?
6 millimeter.
Not so much, yeah.
What is the angle of netting surface?
It's about, I think it's 51 degrees from memory. I had to, it was one of those balances where there's a calculation you can do to get the angle wherever you are in the world. You do a calculation to work out it's to do with the sun's maximum degrees in summer and minimum degrees in winter, and you do this calculation. It's a similar calculation as with solar panels, and to refract most of the light. But also I had this balance of where I wanted to make the most of the timber I've got, and so I had to kind of combine those two factors really in the angle, and also making the most out of the timber, so I could get, basically I didn't waste a lot of timber. Where's that?
What do you think? Oh, sorry. What do you think is a approximate price for this kind of greenhouse if somebody would like to build it?
Timber's gone up a lot, obviously, since I built it 4 years ago. I would say maybe a couple of €1,000. But a lot of it is what you can reclaim or make use of materials again from other places would make a big difference. I know a lot of people can make use of old metal make the frames from metal and utilize scrap metal and things like that. The poles were from our trees, so we didn't have to buy those. I think there is a video on the YouTube channel which I walked through all the costs, and I did include the costs of the poles in that, assuming that someone else couldn't have their own trees to do it, their own. I mean, we didn't go and cut a lot of trees down from our forest. We actually had some is it cryocorpshana, when they clean the forest and then they bring the trees out, and then some of those trees we kind of bought back off them for our firewood, and then the best ones of those I took off the pile and used for this project. So, yeah.
Could you please remind your 3 seasons you were showing, when they start and when they end?
Yeah. This slide, I think we were talking about. I mean, it changes every year, of course, depending on what's going on. And a lot of it is just having a bit of a feel for what's going on. But we've now have planted cold weather crops somewhere in, I mean, February is a stretch, but kind of late March, early April, we can plant cold weather crops here. So that's kind of one season. There's the summer season, and then there's the autumn season when hot weather crops will continue to grow until essentially the light runs out. We run out of light here pretty much at the end of October, early November. So they are really the 3 seasons that are available. vai Latvijā siltumnīca būtu perspektīva Latvijas apskatījos?
Would be Valipini perspective for Latvian climate.
Do you know, when I started this process, I looked at Wallapinis first. That's actually was my first idea, was to build that. We don't quite have we live next to a lake, and so we do have a natural slope that goes down to the lake, but we don't have any high-sided slopes. But the reality is, I was going to have to hire an excavator to dig the Wallapini out, and that was a great expense, and I didn't particularly want that here. And so I turned to more of a passive solar kind of approach. But I think Wallapinis are great, and if you've got the right setup on your land, and you've got that, it just happens to work, then Wallapinis are something that could work really well. I still like the idea of building one somewhere, but yeah, it would be more of a.
Agnes is asking why not to attach the greenhouse to the stone wall of some kind of a building, or on its on the south side. How well it could play out.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great. We just don't have any south wall. None of the buildings here are built with this kind of a perfect south-facing wall, and it's not really practical to have it attached to the house. It would cover up. We don't have enough light in the house anyway. The other spare walls that we have of ruins are just too dangerous. In fact, actually, the old greenhouse before we moved here was attached to some ruins, and it was only moved because those ruins started falling. It became dangerous, basically. And so, yeah, the idea, my dream really is to bring those stones in from that ruin and use that to build the heat mass at the back of the greenhouse. So we do have a proper heat mass in this setup.
At this moment, can you share what have you already planted? What kind of plants?
Only at the moment I put some things in there to germinate, and well, I've got some radish out there, and I've got some flowers that have germinated. I have a light set up inside, so I start growing stuff under lights indoors, and all my cold weather crops are pretty much ready to go out this week. There's no reason why they can't go out now. They will survive no problem. Do I have? I might have a photo. I can call up quickly. So that's my light setup inside. This is not this year, it's from previous year, but these are cold weather crops up here. Can't see it very well, I'm afraid, but
So when is the first harvest that you already can eat something from the greenhouse, like some salads or brassicas or something?
2 or 3 weeks. But once they go out there and they get settled, they grow really quick. I mean, it gets to the point where we've got so much stuff, we're just giving it away to people, or it goes to the chickens or something, or back into the system. It's one of those weird things where it's a shame not to use a space, but when we do use it, the harvest is just really abundant. And people do find it funny in the village that we're giving them salads so early in the year, fully grown salads, pak choy, whatever. I mean, I guess a thing to do would be 1 year is to do an experiment, on the basis that you're willing to lose something, is like plant really super early and just see what happens and just do a load every week. Start back in February or something, or as soon as there's enough light, see how things cope. Um,
What are the mistakes that you could suggest not to make to those listeners who are here this evening, if they want to make a kind of a copy of your project?
it's a good question. It took us the actual building itself, I'm quite happy with. So, what I wouldn't have done is cut the four windows. I found out I cut a window in every panel at the front, and essentially I didn't need it. Um, so,
About these windows, I want to ask. I have seen people are claiming that if you open some window near to the end of the greenhouse, usually these tomatoes are getting not so nice and not giving so much harvest. Have you noticed something like this? Like they don't
no,
like
not
so
really.
much airflow, no?
There's a lot of variables there about temperatures and things like that, which are difficult to comment on, but I've not noticed any difference. They all um, seem to no, I just not noticed any difference. I'm trying to think of the name of the variety. The variety that I'm using for the mid-determinate row is bear. I think it's called Bear's Blood. It's a beefsteak tomato, and it's a later harvesting variety as well. So, um, we picked those, late August, September. It's interesting variety. Sort of when I'm doing videos every month, I'm sort of saying, well, there's nothing happening here, there's nothing happening here, and you just have to really, really wait until late August, September, and then they suddenly all these sort of tomatoes appear. Um,
So you did mention that you cut those windows.
yeah, so I only ever use these two windows. I never use a third and a fourth, so I wouldn't have cut those because I found that the airflow works better by having just these two with the air going in here and then up along the top. Um, that's the only thing I think with the building. I mean, if I had a bigger budget, then yeah, I would build it different. I might have the vent at the top or something like that, but it was all within my budget. Um, the thing that has taken some experimentation is the planting, really. That's what's made us think more about what we can and can't do in there, what works well in different positions. We made a mistake the first year in putting some cucumbers at the front here, right exactly where the arrow is. And then, of course, they exploded. They loved it in there with all the heat, and they just like blocked a lot of light out. And so we had to take a lot of the leaves off. And so we learned from that in the first year. Um, that's really where, yeah, having the experience of planting now and having that, like I showed you in the we weren't really on board with this right from the start. We learned from our mistakes. And also things like we learned that we could get two rows of peppers in there rather than one, and things like that. So we've improved the yield, I suppose, from the greenhouse over time as well.
have you thought to grow something more exotic inside there, like fig trees or banana trees or something else?
I don't know how long banana trees need. I mean, I'm told that the fig tree, you could make the fig tree survive. So perhaps we should give it a go. We've had a go at growing sweet potatoes in there, batatas, yeah. We grew lots of vines and leaves. We didn't have good results for the actual potatoes themselves, but there's a number of things that could have gone wrong there. But the vines themselves are very happy in there, and of course they love that longer growing season as well. The fact they can keep growing into September and still have plenty of heat. I mean, I'm up for experimenting with anything really, but yeah, I don't know whether a banana. Does anyone else grow bananas in Latvia?
I have seen they sell cold hardy bananas from Germany, so maybe there is a chance.
Wow.
I'm really wondering how you will have what kind of temperature you will have when you will install some thermal mass there or stones or water barrels. How it would change everything.
Yeah, I think I mean that is all about the nighttime temperatures, isn't it? I mean, it does soak up. It will help balance some of the temperatures, so it will soak up some of the heat. So it will assist the cooling element in the daytime a little bit, but it's really about keeping things keeping things warmer in the evening. I think what I would enjoy also with the mass, if we can get that stone in there, is raising those temperatures not just above zero, but up to places where you can put tomatoes out even earlier and they're comfortable in there without going to sleep, below 10 degrees or whatever.
So now, if I understood, when it's -6 degrees outside, you can still have about zero inside, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's the limit for now.
Yeah. And we can improve things inside by using agropplava or additional sheeting or insulation pads underneath and stuff like that. I mean, you know how it gets at this time of year. If you're growing a lot of food, there's trays and seedlings and everything everywhere, and you just want to get it kind of out. And that's one of the things we've enjoyed with this actually is we've been able to reduce our space inside because this gives flexibility with the cooler crops, not tomatoes and peppers kind of thing. We can put them out there and not have to worry about them. Even if there was a sudden things that are happy at 0 or 1, if you know what Latvia's like, if you suddenly have a 6 and our temperatures can be different to everyone else's, if you suddenly have a 6 or 7 or whatever, that could really knock things back, even cold climate crops. And we know that by having them in the greenhouse, they'll be absolutely fine, no damage whatsoever.
So the only mistake what you done is those windows, and that's it. Otherwise, you are happy.
I'm happy. I mean, I think because it's also always going to be an ongoing experiment, there are things that I would love to have done sooner, like bringing in that reflective film on the back, and there are some perhaps like hiding the insulation, by the way, is rock wool. It's not glass fiber, so you don't need to worry about glass fibers everywhere. It's rock wool. Yeah.
And by the way, how is the rock wall? Is it not getting bad by the moisture or something else?
No, a lot of people said it would, and it hasn't. I know that I thought I did loads of research about the having a film, and lots of people said you wouldn't need it. Lots of people said you would need it. It was really difficult to get a straight answer. And unless I was going to get an engineer here on site and talk about it, someone who's knowledgeable with the Latvian climate, it was really difficult. There were some moisture inside, but I've checked, and it's not done any detrimental damage to the panels, and they're not even the stiff panels, and they're still standing up. So I've checked the thickness; it's still okay. I don't know what else I can say really. I mean, yeah, even with last year with the moisture that was in the air last year. I mean, maybe I did look at and I covered it in the videos. I did look at all insulations from the solid ones to rock wool to the hemp variety, the more modern eco type versions as well. Sheep wool would have been nice. But it was the costs were just way above. It was one of those things that I had to balance with. So perhaps different insulation options. It's down to someone's budget, really. Yeah.
Questions from the audience? Jautājumi no auditorijas? Lūdzu.
I think there might be a plan this year. Gita is an artist, my wife. Is that we might do some nice paintings on the outside, like to make it a bit nicer as well. I mean, it's better now we have this other garden developed out the front, but you can imagine initially it was like this big white blob on the top of the landscape. But it might be nice to have on the back some plants painted or something to camouflage. You would be the right word, wouldn't it? To camouflage it a bit more, make it blend in. And we have, you can even see we've started utilizing spaces like on the side here. You can just see it in the corner of this photo, depending on your screen, some tall peas and stuff like that. So we've worked out how we can utilize little spaces as well.
Maybe in summer you can grow some runner beans and let them grow onto the glass, so you get some shade at the same time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, might be I missed the point. Why one of the sides of the roof is dark?
Because the sun only shines. The sun
from
actually
this
doesn't
side.
shine. Yeah,
Ah.
yeah. It was really kind of, in Latvia, the sun only shine. It never comes overhead. It only goes up to 50. Overhead would be 90 degrees, which is only on the equator really, and we only have 56 degrees. It feels like it's overhead, but it's not, and so it only shines from the south.
Yeah, but still the impression is that it's quite dark inside.
It could be the photos, but I can assure you won't get any more light coming in from the north side of a building, apart from unless you're reflecting some light somehow, then yeah.
That's why you were talking about that reflective film
On the
side.
inside, yeah. Just to bounce a bit more light around.
We have a question about the polycarbonate. Is it like the monolith or is it with two layers and air in between?
Yeah, it's 2 layers with the air in between. You can get polycarbonate now up to 10 millimeters, which again, it's a budget thing, isn't it? If you've got the budget for it, then use it. I can't remember offhand. Actually, with insulation, it's all about the R value. I don't know how much the R value increases by having a few more millimeters on the polycarbonate. There is some increase, but I mean, another modification, if you've seen the Chinese versions, are you can put even not shutters, but you can have some blinds that come thermal blind that comes down on the windows, and so that it locks in that heat on the from the front window as well. If you really wanted to
Yeah, like
keep
the
the heat in,
curtains. Yeah, like curtains.
your curtains kind of thing, yeah. I did look into a way of mechanically lifting the shade netting up and down, but it got quite complicated.
It looks like we have covered all the questions.
It's lots of questions. It's good.
It's good. Yeah, maybe we can look on the assortment of your plantings. What is your choice? Tomatoes, salad, pak choy?
There's some sweet peas there, I think. These will be lettuces. A lot of this stuff will be going out on the field. I probably have a different photo. So these are all onions from seeds. There are beetroots there, celery. This is it's got two names. Three names. It's either ragged kale or red Russian kale or Siberian kale. This is a really great kale variety, which you can't get in Latvia. Although I passed on some seeds to you, didn't I, Aris?
Yes, yes, yes. We have them now in seed
So
exchange point.
we need to be able to. This is a really hardy variety of kale, and when the leaves are small, it's really tasty in a salad, and then you can let it grow bigger and cook it like a normal kale, and chickens love it. And you can get it to sort of survive in the greenhouse over winter, and on a milder winter, I've had it survive outside in the field, and then it goes to seed. And I brought these seeds with me from England, and I've managed to let it seed over years to keep seeds. But this is a really great variety of kale, and I have asked, because I'm a bit bigger on social media now, I managed to speak to one of the seed companies here and ask if they would stock it because it's such a great kale to have in Latvia. But they didn't come back to me. Pak choy over there, more lettuce.
Is this picture from now, like in this season?
No. This is a previous year.
Okay.
We wouldn't have tomatoes out there at the moment, and they're not potted up yet. I don't know if I've got any other photos that would be. What's this one? No, that's just peppers and tomatoes. Some harvest. That's from last year. That area got overrun with calendula, Kalingalis, isn't it, in Latvian? Which was really nice. It gave some really nice color. And with this area out the front of the greenhouse, we kind of let it grow. We do put some stuff in there like pumpkins and whatever, but we've let it do whatever it wants to do, sort of thing. Which has been interesting.
One more question about this polycarbonate sheets. Do you use some sealing in between them, or you just connected them and that's it?
There are in between the sheets. Let me use a photo and zoom in. So in between the sheets, you have these bonding strips. So it allows you to slide two strips together, and then it overlaps them, and you fix that down to your wooden truss. And then you also have ceiling strips at the bottom as well, and that which were put on later, but
There's a question on maintenance. Is cleaning required similarly to a polycarbonate greenhouse? Any
yeah, the
other
window.
maintenance questions? Yeah.
Yeah, the window, it needs to be cleaned on the inside. I think probably this year I'll give it another coat of paint just to keep the panels. The use of OSB for the panels was a bit controversial. Some people said it won't last, but I sealed it. I used the proper. I mean, OSB is some degree waterproof, but it will struggle in the if you left it on its own, it would struggle in our climate. So I then used the proper water sealing paint on it, and in the edges I used a full sealer on it to make sure that no moisture goes in the edges. It has gone a little bit, but even after 4 years, you can't really notice at all. I mean, and again, that's a budget choice, you know. Would I love to have been built it out of brick and all stuff like that? Yeah, of course I would, but that wasn't in the budget really. So I am pleased with the way, despite all what everyone said, because I took a lot of cautions at the start by making sure everything was sealed with proper sealer and the correct paint and everything. It's not come as bad as people said it was going to be. So that, you know, from a maintenance point of view, those things just need checking every year, and just like you would do, really, any other building.
What you
Don't
could
you
use, what you could use instead of OSB there at the endings and there on the
Well,
bottom.
any kind of flat subluxness, isn't it? Any kind of that material. So, and then it just goes up in price. So if you have um plywood, or, you know, or marine ply, or if you wanted natural materials, wood materials, then they're really your options. Then you move on to more things which are plastic, I suppose. Soundboard. What's it called? Where they have two sheets of plastic with foam sandwiched in between. Those kind of materials. Just have to, yeah. I mean, maybe cement fiber boards or something like that. But it was quite easy to work with. I don't have any regrets about using OSB.
Thank you very much. We had a really explicit story about that, and people are saying many thanks to you and such a nice job. And I would be happy to have such a nice greenhouse. And it's very inspiring story and the greenhouse itself. So let's be inspired by you and let's try to make
Thanks.
ourselves. And thank you very much. And have a wonderful season. The second season,
Yeah.
probably for you already. Thank you very much. And
Thank you, Gary.
No, you're welcome. It was great.
So let's meet another time, another story for the next week, the same place and the same time. And goodbye to everyone.
Goodbye. Thank you.